Yes, sir. Chairman Palguda,
Present.
Vice Chair Brown,
Where'd he go?
I see you.
Here. Here.
Thank you. Member Good,
Present.
Member Hughes is absent. Member Armstrong
Here.
and Member Knight.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Awesome. If you guys would all please stand while we Mayor Good, if you lead us in the pledge, that'd be terrific.
I'd be honored to. Please join me in pledging allegiance to our great republic and the flag that represents it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, you just want to, or Allison, would you read the Title VI policy and meeting procedures, please?
Sure. CYMPO complies with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and related non-discrimination statutes and regulations in all programs and activities. Members of the public may view the CYMPO Title VI plan and submit a self-identification survey by accessing the CYMPO website. As a reminder to those attending the meeting, please keep your line on mute until you wish to speak. And this meeting is available for public viewing on the CYMPO YouTube page.
Awesome, thank you. Item 4, call to the public. This item is to provide an opportunity for presentation of comments by the public on subjects not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the board need not request permission in advance and are limited to 3 minutes. Allison, do we have anyone?
There is no one at this time.
No one's at this time. Thank you. Was that Kimberly?
Yes. Hi.
All right, moving on to item 5, consideration and possible action to approve the November 2nd, 2021 Executive Board Special Meeting Minutes. We've all
Moved, Mr. Chairman.
moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
All right, moving on, item 6, CYMPO Executive Director Report. Mr. Gallegos, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, as a Christmas gift to you, I have no updates at this time. So any questions, comments, happy to answer them.
Man, that is a Christmas gift right there, Vinny. I appreciate that. We have anything? If not, we're moving on to item 7, Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC report. Mr. Adam, is he here?
Mr. Chair, I think we're moving along so quickly that he hasn't signed in yet. So if you want to move on and circle back when he joins.
We can certainly do that. Item 8, review, discussion, and possible action to approve applying for the 5305E Transit Planning Grant Funds. Mr. Gallegos.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, ADOT has just issued a notice of funding availability. This doesn't happen every year, but this does happen on the years when they have some additional transit planning dollars that go unused. They have announced $400,000 is available statewide. It's competitive. It's based upon their evaluation. It's open to the MPOs and COGs in Arizona. At this time, there is an opportunity if you would support it, and I'm going to have Kimberly walk you through a couple things that we're looking at. Kimberly, again, is our new transit planner. She's been working with our transit partners such as Yavapai Regional Transit, Prescott Valley's effort in transit moving forward. And we have identified a few possible projects. The first project she'll talk about is a regional marketing plan for transit. We understand we're not a one-size-fits-all, so we think this will help each area a little bit differently. And then the second thing is a possible active transportation plan, which will be to help plan for bicycle and pedestrian in the region. Again, it's a competitive grant, so not sure that we'll get it, but at least we'll see if we can't bring some additional dollars into the region. Kimberly, can you briefly explain the scope on the two projects to the board, please?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I'm about to bring up my first. Can you all see my screen all right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So our first application will be the CYMPO Transit Marketing Plan. This is to be a regional public transit campaign that will kind of just expose, introduce, kind of highlight and inform current transit services and services that will be up and coming in our area. We have met with Yavapai Regional Transit as well as the transit manager from Prescott Valley. Yavapai Regional Transit currently has a marketing plan from 2015 that they did acquire in partnership with ADOT at the time. They did have a rural marketing type of program available at that time. Since implementing this, they did see a significant increase of ridership because they did follow it. And we did discuss it with them that they would be huge supporters of receiving an update to their plan because it has benefited them so much. With the Prescott Valley microtransit system, it is uniquely different than what YRT is or how they are already operating. And because it is a new system to the kind of environment and culture that didn't have public transportation prior, it would be helpful for them also to have a support with a launch off campaign to provide the best support that we can with them. And we wanted to make it inclusive as well with the city of Prescott to better engage in further conversations into the future. So this is a regional marketing transit plan. This will kind of package our whole system that's coming up with different organizations. This will be our first kind of coordinated method of working together. Next, our second application will be the CYMPO Active Transportation Plan. Again, this will be a regional plan. Ideally, we want to include Prescott, Prescott Valley, and Chino Valley. Prescott does currently have an excellent plan from the pedestrian and bicycle master plan from 2015 that they did create internally. They would receive an update to this plan under this CYMPO Active Transportation Plan. Ideally, we would have a consultant too that would be an available asset. But there is no current scope for either of these plans. That would be something that we could communicate with together into creating that. Prescott Valley does have a plan from 2006. Growth has occurred in both areas as well as Chino Valley. So to reassess the urban pathways and bicycle locations that are available would be helpful, again, as a holistic planning approach to transit as well. So when a person gets off of their step, we want to ensure that there is a safe environment for them to get to their next area, which in the Chino Valley region, there has been some challenges for riders getting that next step with having urban pathways available to them. So these are the plans that we're going over. For the CYMPO Transit Marketing Plan, we are looking to ask for about $75,000. And then for the CYMPO Active Transportation Plan, we are looking to ask for $100,000. Are there any questions on either of these plans at this time?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm sorry if I could just add one thing, Kimberly.
Yes.
Again, my best guess in talking with the other MPOs and COGs and looking at what some are not applying for anything and a few are, I would expect the transit marketing plan would be very favorable to ADOT given our situation, and that seems like a real likely award. The active transportation plan, at this point we would be, it's a bit of a long shot, but again, it's an opportunity to possibly bring dollars to help out with planning efforts into the region. So with that said, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Kimberly and I can answer any questions you might have at this time.
Do you have any questions for Kimberly or Vinny?
Well, I got a question for Vinny, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, go ahead.
If in fact we're going to apply for this money, but don't know how we're going to spend it, is it a spend it or lose it? Or is it a spend it and give it back? Or if we don't do anything, or I don't know anybody that's got a lot of bicycle commuter plans. So, there might be some in the city of Prescott or Prescott Valley, but that's about it as far as I know.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Chairman or Supervisor Brown. Good point. So again, just to be clear, it's 400,000 available to the state, which in this context isn't very much. There's, 10 MPOs and COGs that are eligible to apply for these funds. I've talked to a handful of them that are not. There's a few that are applying for it. If awarded the dollars and we chose not to go forward, I would need to verify, Supervisor Brown, with ADOT. I believe that money would just default back to ADOT. It's not a use it or lose it type of thing. And this application is very basic in what will happen if awarded this. Then we'll go through our typical process of developing a scope from a staff level, presenting that to the TAC, and then again coming back to you for your final approval of pursuing the project. So in all honesty, Supervisor Brown, I would expect that marketing plan would be approved. I don't know that.
Let me ask you another question, Benny. We're Mr. Cherry and I are working with the city of Prescott right now on a possible trail site location where bicycles and equine would be able to share this trail equally. Would that fall into this gunny sack of possible money being spent? Because our project is under $1 million overall, and this would be a big chunk of that for planning.
Yeah, well, it's if I understand your question, I guess maybe can I get a clarification? Are you saying could the plan help with the planning of that, or was your question, are we competing with those dollars?
No, would it be able to use it to bring that plan together?
Yes and no. And here's we kicked around the idea in the office about adding trails to it. I was a little bit concerned that adding trails to it, if we're looking at doing a plan for 100,000, the trails could absolutely be a part of it. I was just worried there wouldn't be enough dollars to accomplish bicycle, pedestrian, and trails. And I did speak to one consultant, and we can absolutely include trails. So I would say, if I can answer your question, I would say it could help. I might be a little bit leery of expanding the scope to include, comprehensive trails. But if we targeted, a specific a couple key trails, that could be helpful to the county, I would say.
Well, we're working towards, this trail system to expand it from the Circle Trail would be the last link, with it going to the west off of Pioneer Parkway and Williamson Valley Road in the city. And we're starting to do some planning, and we figure that the project overall will be $800,000 to $1 million, but that's with a parking lot and a bathroom and a lot of other things involved. Dan can give you more ideas, but if we could have a chance at picking up some of that money to help with that planning, it would certainly defray the cost to the county and the city.
And I would say this, Supervisor Brown and Mr. Chair, members of the board, that if we aren't able to get the money for this, it's still penciled in to do an active transportation plan. And with the new federal dollars that are being pushed down and announced, I would say that CYMPO could absolutely include something like that as part of the active transportation plan. So bottom line, whether we include it in this, if awarded this, we could include it in a follow-up plan, Supervisor Brown. I think that's a great idea, in all honesty.
Okay, Dan can follow up with you and give you all the information in regards to it, okay?
Yeah, I'll talk with him.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Vinny, it's all good.
Yes, sir.
That was similar to my question, was whether this is a pure grant or requiring any matching funds from the representative cities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mayor Good. So yes, there is a match. There is a 20% match. CYMPO is responsible for that 20% match. CYMPO is made up of the member agencies, as you just referred to. The way that we handle all match, is our priority as staff is always to generate or to focus on the in-kind match. So I want to say over the years, we have sent you all a few bills for hard cash, but it is very far and few between. And the reason for that is Allison documents the time of you as elected officials, the time of your staff, any public that we interact with. That consumes by far a majority of the in-kind match. Specifically to these projects, the marketing plan, Kimberly and I have reached out. There would be a match on the marketing plan, and because Prescott Valley would be able to have their own specific marketing plan, we did ask for assistance to help with the match. Same thing with Yavapai Regional Transit. So, just to be clear, CYMPO is responsible for the full match. And Allison, remind me, it's $15,000, I believe. So right now we have asked YRT for $4,000 worth of match. Again, this isn't write us a check. This is just document time. And then same thing with the town of Prescott Valley. So that's $8,000, and that would leave $7,000 for CYMPO. And Allison can comment on this, that kind of in-kind we generate pretty easily, I guess I would say. The active transportation plan would have community meetings, and that would generate in-kind. So I hope that answers your question. If not, I'm happy to follow up.
So if I understand that, we probably have enough accumulated in-kind match to be able to qualify for whatever the 20% should necessarily be. And if I also understand, you're saying the whole state is being awarded $400,000. So it's we would only get a portion of that, depending on how many other jurisdictions apply for this.
Yes, member, good, exactly. Everything you described. So there is a match responsibility of 20%. It depends on what we're awarded. There is 400,000 available to the entire state. And again, there's 10 MPOs and COGs that are eligible for that. And it'll just depend. Again, it would be very unlikely that we're going to get awarded both of these projects, but it's just we don't know who all is applying. So the 75,000, if awarded, we would be responsible for 15,000 of the match. On a regular basis, we do generate that as in kind from your participation. So we would be responsible for it, but I don't foresee any issues with it.
There's no penalty involved here. We apply for it and are denied or giving less than what we need or something like that. If we decide to reject it as it's coming back, there's no penalty, right?
No penalty, Supervisor Brown, at all. Just an opportunity to bring some more dollars into our region.
Well, then I would make the motion that we go ahead and apply for it and at least see how much they're going to give us.
Yeah, I can second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We can dot the i's and cross the t's later and, figure out where the match is going to come from when we know what number we're dealing with. So.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, item 9. Kevin, I didn't skip over you, buddy. We're just going to plug you in at the end if that's okay. Review, discussion, and possible action to approve the request for qualifications RFQ for the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview. Mr. Gallegos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So just a couple PowerPoint slides just to bring us up to speed. So again, this item is in your packet in detail. What I have on the PowerPoint is just to highlight a few things for you and then those that are all participating in this. What is being brought to you today is the request to be able to issue out a request for qualifications for the Sundog Connector, a design concept report, or DCR, an environmental overview. Again, the study area exists between State Route 69 and the town of Prescott Valley, going west to Prescott Lakes Parkway at the roundabout near where the new jail is being built. This is the study area. If you're not familiar with the two ends, the two intersections are constructed and built, again, on Prescott Lakes Parkway on State Route 69. This goes back to our strategic planning retreat that we had in August with the staff, the TAC, and you as a board. At that strategic retreat, we talked about the regional priority planning projects for the next 5 years. Again, a reminder that what was presented then and what continues to be our focus is rooted in previous transportation plans, most especially or most recently the 2020 to 2045 regional transportation plan, which again was an extensive study to identify the regional transportation priorities. As always, we're looking at the safety and capacity of the entire transportation network. The consensus that was achieved, while it was very close, was the current fiscal year, we would focus on Sundog Connector. And then next fiscal year is the State Route 69 Master Corridor Plan. I just want to make a note here, because I know fiscal years can be different for different areas and confusing. The next fiscal year is in a little over 6 months from now. So we would actually begin the process this spring for the 69 Master Corridor Plan. So these projects are back to back. I know there's been a lot of comments and questions as to the order of looking at both of these projects. But for the most part, staff will be working on these projects simultaneously and gathering the information for you to decide on how you'd like to move forward. With that said, we have again multiple stakeholders, key factors, a couple things to acknowledge. CYMPO's role in this is a planning role. We're looking at attempting to facilitate all the moving pieces for the best possible outcome. We recognize that in this short 4-mile corridor, that there is the city of Prescott, there's state trust land, Yavapai County unincorporated areas, and then the town of Prescott Valley. So there's definitely a lot happening in this short area. We also recognize the opportunities again for public-private partnership with the Storm Ranch development subdivision, Yavapai Hills, Diamond Valley. In your packet, again, you have the details, but I want to walk through the scope just on a couple areas that I do think are important to highlight as part of the scope of work. And by the way, I'm filling in for Daniel. He is under the weather today, so grant me just a little bit of mercy because this was his part, but I think I can handle it. So the assessment of alternatives is the 2013 PARA study that the city of Prescott did with some grant funds at the time. We want to be able to revisit that, and we don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel, except to use information that may still absolutely be pertinent relative to today. That second bullet point is very important, to look at, for the need of this project, the potential transportation benefits, to provide you with information and data that'll answer many questions you have, to confirm the possible roadway capacity, and again, to look at a possible multimodal evaluation of this road, the opportunities for bicycle, pedestrian, maybe a trailhead along this roadway. The topography has been talked about, the geography of this area, where the road would need to be located, and how the current environment could impact the project and the overall elements of it. Again, the traffic analysis, most especially for both ends, as you look at 69 in Prescott Valley, as you look at the western end on Prescott Lakes Parkway near State Route 89, looking at, again, the technical aspects of the earth in that area, the geography of that area, the drainage, and then listing it out of the specific right-of-way, where that's going to be located at exactly, how that will be acquired, the utilities. This third one is critically important. I can't emphasize it enough. Again, public outreach and engagement. I know we've talked about that 2013 meeting several times before, and there was great participation. There was 2 meetings with over 200 people that participated. We would expect that and more, and we want to give the public every opportunity to review, to be transparent, to engage. So as part of the scope, we have identified that we do want to see several meetings in person in the community, but we have also identified that with technology, there is opportunities for even greater outreach, online, and so forth. So there's a lot of tools that can be used for collecting information, collecting input. And I want to hit on briefly the timeline, the overall timeline for this project. That initially, we had talked this would be about a 12-month project. In light of public outreach and engagement, more than willing to support a 12 to 18 month, again, to allow for maximum engagement and participation. Moving on from that, environmental overview, to be able to look at the environmental impacts, wildlife. Again, CYMPO has an active ecosystem mitigation group that EMAC that we participate with. They're going to remain active in the project and helping to identify, again, wildlife corridors, linkages, possible mitigation with wildlife and transportation. And again, rounding out the scope is the engineering scoping that we would be able to walk away. And here this goes back to the strategic retreat that, at that time, we didn't know what the feds would come out with for infrastructure money, but we're having a pretty decent idea now. And the question that I posed was, as a region, what do we have that is a regional project that could be further along and ready for a federal partnership? And so we wanted to get something that was further along. So the 15% engineering scoping is something that will help us to get the project further along. And then finally, the estimated cost of the project. Here's my last slide. This is the timeline that is in your packet, but I just wanted to bring it up on the screen to run through it. If approved today, we would hope to issue out the request for qualifications or RFQ this week. Given the holidays of Christmas and New Year's, we extended a typical response time. We gave some additional time, so it wouldn't be due back to CYMPO until January 21st. And then the TAC and staff would form a working group to start narrowing down who has submitted for the project. The TAC at their March 3rd meeting would come up with a recommendation for you. You would be presented what their recommendation is to consider your approval at your March 16th meeting. Just a point of order, that April 6th, CYMPO has an agreement with Yavapai County as our fiscal agent. So in that fiscal agent agreement, the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors would also need to approve the funding for that, even though you as a board have already approved the budget that CYMPO works within. So we would need to jump through that hoop. And then the final thing is the execution of the contract in April. And I have just a couple more things, and then I'll open it up to questions and comments. On this next part, I'll need a little help from Allison to bring up the, what are you going to bring up first, Allison? Thank you. The notice of request for qualification. So for the last few months, we've worked extensively with the CYMPO attorney. So we have outside counsel who helps us, who also works with ADOT, Federal Highway Administration, to make sure that we're in compliance. And there is a lot of T's to cross and a lot of I's to dot. So Allison, Daniel, and myself have basically worked with them. What you have here, what you have in your packet, is what's going to go out for the RFQ. And Allison, we have a few changes in this one, is that correct?
That's correct. We just have a couple. I'll go ahead and scroll all the way down to where they are.
If you could make it a little bit bigger and if you could note what it is that the attorney is changing. And I would just give a heads up that what the attorney is changing is standard language that ADOT identified. So I don't know that it's specific to CYMPO, but it is statewide as it involves with federal projects. So Allison, can you walk through those changes that were needing to be made?
Sure. Do you want me to go ahead and just read it for you?
Please.
Okay. So the change reads, the budget for any project is not publicized, allowing for maximum competition. It is the responsibility of the contractor to propose the most competitive pricing possible, and then after award to work within the constraints of the awarded budget. And then beyond that, Vinny, I believe it's just some formatting changes made to the RFQ.
Thank you, Allison. And then can you go into the professional services agreement?
Yes.
Now, with the professional services agreement, Mr. Chair, members of the board, again, same thing. The challenge here is we do have a number of changes in this that have been changed since you received your packet. Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask that the changes that have been noted, and we can show them on the screen, but again, they're within the realm of standard federal and state language. Talked with our attorney several times to assure that he has read it, he has approved it in the sense that it's standard language. So, you know, if we go through this today and you find something that you may or may want to discuss further, we can definitely take it back. But it's one of those things that it's one of the attorney or Arizona Attorney General type of conversations. It's not a unique to CYMPO language. So Allison, will you scroll down and let's kind of hit on some of these. And then Mr. Chair, I'll ask for your direction as to how you want us to handle it. So again, there's a couple key parts where just some words were added. Go back to the top, Allison, where you had executive. So they neglected to put in executive orders. Things like that are incredibly minor. But if you'd scroll down a little bit more, we do get into some other areas. Keep going. Just a couple cleaning up things, a couple references to state statutes. So again, as we go through here, there are going to be a number of changes, and it's up to you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, how you want us to go through these right now, or is it satisfactory that the attorney has reviewed it and made these changes with ADOT's support? So you give us guidance and we'll walk you through it however you want to.
Yeah, I think we can just defer to that of the attorneys because I'm pretty confident that's what they're paid for.
Thank you. So with that said, thank you, Allison, for bringing that up. With that said, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer additional questions or comments.
Okay, Vinny, I've got a couple of questions, but they're actually for Mayor Good. And I hope he's still on the line because I don't see
Hey,
him.
Phil's back. Good to see you, Phil.
Where did he go?
He's on video now.
Oh, okay. His name's not up. Okay, there now it is. Okay. Hey, Phil, I was just wondering, does this have any impact on your negotiations with the state and or with the Storm Ranch folks in creating your park over in that general area? Does this road have any negative impact or possibly positive impact?
Well, I believe it will. We have so many different projects that are in the process of being completed and potentially impacting the access to that road, and being able to study the traffic impacts when we've got the regional park and the Storm Ranch acquisition in process, both the Justice Center and how that might potentially impact traffic in this area. Arizona Eco Development certainly has been approved and it's starting to move forward as far as its development. That will have an impact on it. We're a ways away until we get ADOT's expansion of the 69 Narrows there in front of Frontier Village. And we're planning on doing a widening through 89 in the Dells Narrows areas. So we have all these different projects that would potentially impact the legitimacy of some of this study that's going to be going on. Should we approve this feasibility study, or what are we calling it today? I just think there's so many moving parts here. This is going to be premature, and quite frankly, I'm not willing to commit taxpayer dollars from the city to study something that may, in a year or two, be obsolete and have to be redone.
Greg, did you have something to add to that?
No, I just thought, it'd be good to know what the city was planning on doing, because it's primarily in the city. The first phase of 2 phases at least, and this planning. Well, the only thing this is going to basically give us is probably a general number, which will change significantly over the over the process of a few years, is give us a number on how much this thing may cost. And that's another issue in and of itself. Am I right, Benny?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Supervisor Brown. So yes, it's going to narrow it down. Right now, the 2013 study gives a lot of information, but for the most part, it's still that study area. This is coming out of that 2013 study that said the next step is to do a design concept report, which will do exactly what you said, sir. It'll narrow it down to, instead of having either a bubble or 4 possible roads, it'll narrow it down to a single road, which will in turn give you that more specific cost. And then if I can, again, one of the ideas is that this would set us up for, again, that ask of a federal grant, putting us in the best possible position to be able to seek additional funds for this project being able to move forward.
Well, Phil, would not this help you guys then determine whether or not this type of report will give you some idea what the participation will be by the city in a dollar amount? And it'll also give you a better idea of which route is going to be taken if you need that information going forward for whatever you planned in the park stage of.
Well, hypothetically, I agree with you. It would provide some clarification of what the total cost would be, what the route would be if it turns out to be a viable project. It's just that I see with all these other projects in various forms of process, if we're analyzing what we have now, I could just see a couple of years from now saying, well, that information is obsolete and we're going to have to repeat it. And we're still dealing with this potential 10-year federal funding deadline. I just don't see how we could possibly get there.
I think something that we have to keep in mind too is that this is narrowing it down is so important, because there are so many questions out there from all the citizens. And where's it going to go? Are there going to be on ramps, off ramps? What does that look like? And by just at least taking this step gets us a little bit closer. And I agree with you, Phil, that there's a chance that this changes, but at least it'll start giving answers to questions that we have, or develop more questions that we may have, that we then can bring other partners to the table to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Otherwise, we're going to kick the can down the road, and then in 2 years, kick it again down the road and be the classic definition of government, I think. So
I know, I just,
the people.
I'm always concerned when the federal government steps in and dangles a bunch of dollars, and you want to grab onto that. Sure. Because apparently it has no real detrimental impact. You get information that may be used in the future when and if it becomes a viable project. But there's also a lot of momentum that's created when you move forward with some of these studies.
And I think I agree with you on the study part. I think that as an overall grand scheme of things, months and years down the road, that this is a council discussion, that we all go back to our respective boards or councils, and this is presented to them and they make that decision. I don't feel comfortable speaking for the other 6 on my board or on my council, whether or not this is a go or a no-go. I think it should at least press forward at this stage. Whether or not the same conversation we have 8-10 months down the road that possibly could change, absolutely, I totally agree. But at some point we have to start somewhere, in my thought.
I appreciate your consideration for that. And if I look at this the way at least it's proposed, we're just trying to identify what the potential cost would be if we were to proceed with this, and if it turned out to be something that would be beneficial for the traveling public, and whether it in fact would relieve congestion on 69. I don't know, it looks primarily to me like it's just an access road for more development in that big section in the middle that's owned by Giese and who wants to develop it. But I do have concerns about the safety of the people in that back bowl area of Yavapai Hills, where just trying to get police and fire response back there now, and they have almost no cell phone coverage. It's a public safety concern the way it currently exists.
I think this certainly answers more, or we'll develop more answers of the pros and cons of what works and what doesn't work, and allows us to basically make a more educated, vote in regards to how this proceeds. But I think it definitely helps answer more questions, because right now people are confused and they just don't know what exactly this looks like. Heck, I don't know exactly what this looks like, and I think that's what the point of this is.
It's kind of funny. This is reminiscent of what happened when CYMPO talked about this back in about 2014, because this is why it got put on the back burner, because of all these unanswered questions that nobody could come up with what was going to happen. And also the fact that the residents at the time were so against it, and that ended up on a back burner. Why are us resurrecting it? It is obviously because of the traffic flow and the amount of people that have moved in since then. And we got a lot of traffic issues, and we all agree to that. But if you got plans going on for something other than another 4-lane highway basically going through those hills, that's going to have an impact on people in open space, which is what everybody wants out there apparently. So, and the city's got to deal with that because it's all in the city primarily.
For the most part, you're right.
And Mr. Chair, members of the
We're
board,
gonna pony up $100 grand. That's a lot of money. Just to do this.
if I can offer a comment, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Just a note, a reminder too, that this particular corridor has been identified in I believe the 3 previous Prescott general plans. It's been identified, I want to say, in all of our regional transportation plans, which at this point, I think CYMPO's had 3, 4, I think we've had now 3 regional transportation plans since our beginning. It's in the Prescott East. There was a Prescott East plan that was done in the late 90s. Anyhow, all that to say is I know CYMPO is resurrecting the conversation, but we're also, it's rooted in individual general plans, individual regional transportation plans. And at this point, trying to get you more information so that, again, you could decide how to proceed forward. Just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Anyone have anything else?
No.
No.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say, and of course, I'm not as familiar with all of that as you guys are, but from my perspective, this RFQ for the connector design concept and report and the environmental review is going to help to answer a lot of the questions that were asked here today, as I see it. So that would be a good thing. But that's from an outside person looking in, that's what it looks like to me.
Well, let me take it one step though, Gary, beyond that. Let's say we decide to do it. We spend the $400,000 and we get this report. Then we decide not to do it because of what the report says. Now we have to pay that $400,000 back. Am I correct, Vinny? Because it's federal money?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Supervisor Brown. So the 10-year construction clock, let's be clear, under a design concept report, if the road is not constructed, then 10 years from now, if it's not constructed within 10 years, the money needs to be paid back. So the 400,000 would need to be paid back by CYMPO. So because I've looked into this, I still don't have the final answer, but I will tell you that because the city of Prescott is moving forward with Storm Ranch and they're developing a segment of the roadway, the city of Prescott has received a plat for the Yavapai Hills section, and I'm drawing a blank, Mayor Good, but I think it's Unit 9, I think it's referred to. That's the section that's to be developed. They're going to be developing another segment of Sundog Connector. There is a development agreement between the city of Prescott and Yavapai Hills from the late 90s that discusses, again, further development, basically that between the city of Prescott and Yavapai Hills, that more road development would need to be take place on the western end. So all of that to say that over the next 10 years, segments of this road are being developed. What I'm trying to get from federal highways is, do any of those check the box that eliminate the 10-year clock? An unofficial answer is yes, but I do not have that to provide to you a guarantee. But I do believe with the work that is moving forward, that 10-year construction clock can be avoided because of other parts that will be developed, is my response.
Well, the developer there that has the platted project right now would have to really provide the funding for the connection into that development from the Sundog roundabout. So that would be the developer's cost. And that would get probably a third of the potential full route. But that would be on their dime, and the city wouldn't have that obligation or that risk of saying, if we move forward and it turns out that we don't want to complete it, that we have to pay this whole money back to the feds.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Mayor Good, on that, just a clarification. And I'm still, because the development agreement that was provided to me by your planning staff a few weeks ago, I'm still reviewing it, and I'm asking for our attorney to help with it, because the language as I read it, and please talk with your staff and let us know if you find more additional information. But as I read it, it seems like, again, it's a mutual agreement with the city of Prescott, Yavapai Hills. And the way that it's determined, I guess, how the road gets built is the city of Prescott would need to conduct a traffic study and analysis. And it would then be determined how much responsibility falls on the developer and how much is on the city of Prescott. As I read the development agreement, I know Craig Dotseth is in the audience, and he may have some background knowledge on that or history on that. But as I read it, Mayor Good, it seems like it's an agreement between the two parties, and you're right, the developer would need to do some, but as I read it, it seems like Prescott would also have a role in that.
Well, I can't dispute that assessment, but it's pretty clear that the developer obviously has a much larger development now that it's been approved. Arizona Eco Development through the Dells and all the way up to the airport. So whatever decision on what priority that developer decides to assign to this particular project is unknown at this point. I mean, the developer may decide that he doesn't want to engage this particular project that he has in Yavapai Hills for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And if that were to happen, then absolutely we'd never be able to get this project done and completed and signed off on in a 10-year time frame. So it's just a lot of questions that are unanswered, and it's very difficult to commit those taxpayer dollars without a clear picture of what this would look like, how it would be funded, how it would be built, when it would be completed, and what would be the taxpayer investment from the city.
And Mr. Chair, members of the board too, to add again, CYMPO's role, I agree with you, sir. There's a lot more questions and answers. We want to get you as many of those answers as we can. From the planning, with wearing my planning hat, CYMPO's involvement, we can really help to shape this versus coming in 10 plus years from now and all the different segments to connect the dots in the future are going to be so much more costly than if we play a role now. And if we see if we can't facilitate really influencing what is the best possible transportation corridor here, and could it acknowledge the concerns that we've heard from the public, again, location, sound, traffic, congestion? Can we in the planning process help to shape that? If I can just add one note on the park, I did reach out to a few people. I talked to Parks and Recreation Director Joe Baines. It seems as though there's a bit of a buffer, probably about a 1.5 mile buffer between here and that potential park. I did say as part of the planning process, we could look at a trailhead or trail access. So again, from a planning perspective, we want to take into consideration that park, what's happening with it. It would fall on the most southern border of what's being considered in that area. But it does seem from a planning approach, we could really work together. Again, ultimately get you more answers than you have today.
Well, I wouldn't mind supporting it if I knew that we weren't submitting that $100,000 investment here that would be put at risk, because we really don't even know the basic answers yet. Just like you were saying, that you have to clarify whether this study would be subjected to a return of those dollars should we decide not to proceed.
Bill, I'm going to kind of put this on your shoulders as far as speaking for me in the county and my district, which adjoins this area. I'm going to, whatever the city wants to move forward with, I'm in support of on this. I believe it should be held for open space, and I'm not crazy about a road, but if we have to have one, it's going to be necessary in the future. But at this point in time, until we know exactly what our plan's going to be and what is possible and what is not, I agree with you that I don't see moving forward as being a good idea. It looks to me as I'm going to spend $400,000 and then turn around, like you said, in 3 or 4 years and spend it again. So
I think that's more of a likely scenario than the other option.
Or we can just imagine what happened 7 years ago and basically kick this project down the road again. And it's almost like we're paralysis by analysis. We're just doing these what ifs. And
that's true. And Kel, maybe we should approach it. We've been looking at this as starting from Sundog and moving out from the jail location and going eastbound. What if we reverse this and said, let's look at it from eastbound going west? Is that a possibility, Benny?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, Supervisor Brown, exactly. Thank you for mentioning.
Because those same questions do not come up that Phil and I have, because it's coming from the other side.
Absolutely. So please note that a part of this is to look at what is already in place and then to go a step further with what you're saying, Supervisor Brown. just because those two intersections are built, again, is there a better adjustment in light of, and then fill in the blank? Is it because of the jail, State Route 89? Is there another connecting point? That can absolutely be a part of it. I know we've been talking, and I agree, both ends are done and finished, but part of this will provide you information to either secure that those two endpoints need to remain the endpoints, or to Supervisor Brown's point, is one of those endpoints, should they be reevaluated, reconsidered, again, providing you with that information very specifically. What would that look like? What does it look like to make an adjustment like that, both cost and impact to everything else involved?
But we're not going to know that. We're not going to know that until we do the study.
Correct.
I think our jobs are to gather as much information as possible and make those decisions based off of good information. Right now, some of us are, we're just kind of speculating a little bit on what could happen, might happen. But in order to make a good educated decision, we need to have this data. And I think it's important to start here.
And again, Mr. Chair, we're trying to just respect the existing general plans, the existing things that have existed, as best I can tell, since the mid-90s. So again, Sundog Connector has been referenced in all these things. So I just want to be clear today that, CYMPO hasn't invented this today, but has been around for 25 years. And Mr. Chair, Dan Cherry has his virtual hand raised.
Dan, what's up, buddy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'd like to, throw a little bit of the tax perspective in here, and that is that what we're looking for here is more information. Say we spend $400,000 on this, and we go through these efforts that are outlined in this design concept report. I'd like to think that CYMPO is gaining something from that. I realize there are concerns that things may, change over time, but at the very least, we are getting quite a bit more information for our dollars if we spend them. We would gain not only a better idea of what this would cost to build, whether that's part of it or all of it, depending on private dollars coming in, but also we learn more information about where things lie with respect to drainage, with respect to wildlife, with respect to other environmental concerns. These are all things that can be built upon as we discuss this further or move forward. And, in the unfortunate circumstance that the Federal Highway Administration makes a determination that not enough has occurred and we need to pay these dollars back, I'd like to think that CYMPO has gained something from that. And when I refer to CYMPO, I mean as all of our member agencies as together. And I do believe that, as Vinny has already touched on, there's a strong possibility that if part of this gets built via some private movement forward, that concern may drop off anyway. So is there a risk? Certainly there is. I don't disagree with that. But I do believe that in the long-term planning efforts of this organization, this has been talked about enough and has been prioritized enough that I do believe there's tremendous benefit in taking on some risk and seeing what we can do and involving the public. We're very much interested in the public's input on this. And I know that this is a important topic politically by our elected officials that represent these agencies. So just wanted to throw my 2 cents in. I appreciate the opportunity.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thank you. And I think one of the things that, Vinny, you just briefly touched on it, but this has been in the general plan. It has been voted on by the citizens. This is something that they see as a vision moving forward. And then CYMPO, we're just helping to facilitate the will of the voters on what they decided on years ago. So we're actually listening to them.
Correct, Mr. Chair. That's, and again, our regional transportation plans are rooted in the general plans from Prescott Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, Chino Valley, and the county comprehensive plan. So We're not looking to reinvent the wheel here. We're trying to build upon what the previous public process has been. Sundog Connector again has specifically been referenced. Whether or not in the future you decide to move forward, that'll be up to you with your individual councils and boards, and your commitment to that. As a planning process, though, we want to continue to gather the information necessary so that you can make an informed decision. Again, as has been mentioned, many moving pieces, but we need to identify those and see what opportunities we have. Again, a reminder that we'll be working on the 69 Master Corridor Plan. So you'll have plenty of information to make the best decision to move forward between the Sundog Connector and 69. And at that time, be able to decide which would be a better investment for the region at that point.
I just see that the timing here is not good. I mean, how long has it taken us to even get to the point where we can go out to bid for the 69 widening? That's been what, 6 years or so? And we're just working on easements at the moment. So whether that will have a substantial improvement in traffic flow from Prescott Valley to Prescott remains to be seen. I think it probably will. But at the same time, working on this additional project, I think there's just too many unanswered questions in my mind. And I think this is an example when the federal government comes in here and says, here's some money, but oh yeah, there's some strings attached. It's so easy to grab onto that lure and find out later that you've done the study and therefore the momentum is to go ahead and move forward, even if it's not all that positive, because if you don't, you're got to pay that money back. And that's only what we know. There may be other conditions in addition to having to return the total amount of funding.
On the other hand,
Or where those conditions are today, Vinny. You said you're still trying to get answers to that.
Correct. And again, and I'll tell you, we have reviewed the language, and this is, I don't mean to fuel the fire, but this is a straight out of federal language. There is some vagueness when it comes to that 10-year construction clock, and because of that, it's in the favor of this conversation for what it's worth. But I do wish the federal language was very clear what checks the box.
Yeah, I wish that too.
Yeah, so I wish I could give you that clear answer that you want. The counsel I've received up till date is that we are going to be able to check the box. I can't offer that guarantee to you today, sir, but just look at the activity that we've discussed today, and the thing does not describe the road being constructed completely, but that it be programmed and certain aspects be placed in the CYMPO tip. We're going to be doing that in one way or another. So again, I'm confident we'll be able to check the box. And if I can echo what Dan Cherry said again, to be able to get that information, it would be incredibly valuable. Mr. Chair, Dan has his hand up virtually.
Virtually hand up, Dan, what do you got?
So I hesitate to bring this up because it's certainly not set in stone either, but another option, if this board is truly concerned about expending federal dollars on this sort of work, is we have earmarked a portion of the potential one-time funding that is being discussed as going to CYMPO should the 2022 legislative action occur, which I believe Kevin will talk about later. We've had good opportunity to, discuss this with our legislators. There's always potential that come middle of 2022 that we would have some funding that is earmarked for support of this project that would not be federal dollars. So if there is truly a strong desire by this board to avoid spending federal dollars, yet still get some answers, I might suggest as a backup plan that you wait and see what our legislature does next year in 2022. And perhaps by the middle of the year, there would be some additional funding that could come down and be put towards this DCR and environmental overview without formally starting a 10-year clock. So please keep that in mind.
Mr. Chair, if I could follow up on that, that's a great point. Thank you, Dan, for bringing that up. So a reminder, through the RTAC one-time funding that we're pursuing, again, this isn't a done deal. Kevin will give us an update, but based upon a $50 million statewide ask, CYMPO would be awarded just under $4 million. Again, we have previously presented to you and you have approved where that monies would go based on staff and tax recommendation. At this time, we do have $1.5 million, if awarded, to go towards this Sundog project. So I just want to be clear on what Dan's saying. It is an option if, as a backup option, if those monies are awarded. Given this overall timeline, it'll all work, even if you approve it today, that we could end up using the statewide dollars for this, because right now it's identified as a design project. This is a design concept report. So it'll take some work, but we would essentially exchange the federal dollars that would be used for this project, use statewide dollars, then there would be no construction clock that would start. Again, there's more that would have to be done by staff behind the scenes to make this all work, but that is an option if your concern remains that 10-year construction clock.
Well, I can tell you if that were to happen, I'd be more amenable to looking at what this study would provide us to be able to make a decision farther on down the road. So I just see the political pressure that once we commit to this, people are going to say, oh, you're going to lose that $100,000 if you don't keep moving forward. And that's how those political projects get the pressure applied.
So where are we at, Vinny? Are we ready for a vote on this, or? what are we-
Yeah, again, just to be clear, with all this in mind, the recommendation of staff, of myself to you, would still remain the same. And with respect to all your points, absolutely have heard it. Staff's aware of the concerns. We've been working closely with all of you the last few months, incredibly aware of the moving pieces. But from a planning organization standpoint, our next step is to get you the information so that you can decide how to move forward. And, maybe to close out on Dan's point, again, keep in mind that if awarded that statewide funds, that looks incredibly promising, we would be able to utilize those funds towards this project. So with that said, our recommendation would be to, as with the TAC, to move forward on this project of a design concept report.
I just want to just go on the lines that this is just a design and planning. You're recommending it, Vinny. That's what we pay you to give us advice. The TAC's recommending it. And this also gives us answers to questions that the citizens are going to have that they're already asking. And right now they're kind of just spitballing it right now. They don't know what's going to happen. And this helps provide us with that information. Then maybe at the end of the day that this doesn't work out based off of the report, but at least we can go back to our councils and say, hey, this is what the story is. What do you guys want to do? And we go from there. This is just part of a planning process. And if we can't decide on this, then I don't even know what CYMPO, what the whole point of this is. Or the whole point is to plan to move forward and get answers to questions that we don't currently have. That's just my thought. So, but if we're ready, if there's nothing else.
If we can add the condition onto this vote that CYMPO will actively engage our legislature to provide that funding to potentially replace the federal dollars so that we can remove the liability for repayment, then we're in a much better position for me to support that.
I think
And-
that's safe to say, right, Vinny? I mean, put
Yeah.
that as a stipulation that you're going to fight for that.
Mr. Chair, Mayor Good, I would say, yes, absolutely, moving forward. If I can just offer, we have been doing it, and in Kevin's update, you'll get another one. You know, Kevin's led the effort. I've participated with him as much as I can. I've lost count, but I know we were up to, 15 plus legislators that we visited one-on-one with. Kevin has, or I have with him and others. We had the summit where there was 15 plus legislators. I don't want to jinx us, Kevin, but it just seems like there's way more positive than negative, that this approach of getting these funds that they really like. I have met with Kevin. We met with President Fan. She's aware of it. I had the opportunity to visit with Representative Wynn about it. So at this point, unless I'm speaking out of turn, Kevin, there's not, anyway, there's more support than not to all the funding, Mayor Good. But again, just know that $1.5 million of our 4 million is intended for the Sundog project. So I just want to offer that.
Let's make sure that we, when we publicize this project, it's made crystal clear to the public that we're not making the decision to move forward with this construction. This is purely an analysis of the potential impact, the drainage, wildlife corridors, all the necessary information to be able to make a decision. And we're not making the decision now. We're purely looking at the foundational information we need to understand it.
I think just, yeah, absolutely, Mayor, the fact-finding process. I mean, we are so early in the stages on this, and I think convincing or conveying that message to the public is key on moving forward.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Dan has his hand up.
Dan, what do you got?
Just one more thought in regards to this. What you're being asked to consider for approval today is the publication for advertisement of this request for qualifications. There will be no contract even approved by this board until April is the plan. We may have a lot more information from the legislature at that time, and it's possible that there will be, some hints as to which direction it's going that can be considered. And it's not out of the question that you table it for a month in April and buy yourself a little more time as to how to pay for it. If it costs us a month or something, come next spring, I think that's worthwhile. But at the very least, we can get this process started with an approval today and advertise this. And Mayor Good, your comments are very well received. I think the concerns you've expressed today are very valid and have a lot of merit. So I believe Vinny and his staff can certainly make it clear what our intent is here. So thank you. Just wanted to throw that out, that we're not agreeing to a contract here today. We're agreeing to try to find an appropriate firm that can move this forward.
Thanks, Dan. That's a good point for sure.
Thank you.
With that being, if there's nothing else, then we can at least ask for a motion and at least call the vote. So with a motion, I'll make the motion then, just to start the process in regards to the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview.
Second.
All right, so all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I guess I'll vote for it.
You're an aye for
Aye.
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 Phil? Oh, I'm sorry, Craig.
I'll vote aye because Phil did.
All right, I'll vote aye because I made my decision. So aye. Moving on. Item 10, review and discussion and possible action to approve amendment to the fiscal year 2022-2023 Unified Planning Work Program. Vinny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm going to ask Allison to bring this up on the screen. I'm going to ask for her help also. My voice is starting to give out a little bit, but as Allison walks you through these changes, just know that it's more housekeeping than anything. And what we're doing is we're updating some numbers, which is something we do on a regular basis. The numbers are based upon, we're receiving additional information from ADOT Finance. We're also being counseled as to, again, keep in mind that CYMPO receives different pots of funding or colors of funds that we would refer to. So there's always this adjustment. So it's more housekeeping, but Allison, can you walk the board through the amendment in the work program, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Vinny said, it is mainly just housekeeping items. I'll go ahead and scroll through. You can look at the highlighted portions. Here we're just updating our staff with our new transit planner, Kimberly Blanco. Down here, page 12, we are updating our FY21 carry forward amounts per request from ADOT and FHWA. Previously, we had listed the amounts that needed to be reprogrammed into FY22. But per ADOT and FHWA request, they've asked that the full amounts, whether needing to be reprogrammed or not, be included and listed. So that's what you see here. On this next page, I'll turn it around for you. Here we're moving funding from our administration task item between our administration and our regional planning projects tasks. We were notified by ADOT that SPR funding is not eligible to be spent on a design concept report. So we're simply trading fund sources between these two tasks. The amount is $112,000. SPR funding will be moved from the regional planning projects to admin, and STBG funding will be moved from admin to regional planning projects. And then going out throughout the rest of the document, you'll just see highlighted boxes noting that same change, the swapping of funds between admin and regional planning projects. And this is the last budget table, again, just showing that swapping of funds. So we're just looking for the board's approval on this amendment here.
Pretty simple.
I have one question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Blanco, is she a new employee or an additional employee?
Both.
Both. Okay. How does that work?
Back at the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Supervisor Brown, back at the retreat, strategic retreat, we talked about our agreement between NACOG and CYMPO. We had a position that has gone back and forth between NACOG and CYMPO over the last 10 years now. The role is mobility manager. When I started at CYMPO, I think 9 years ago, CYMPO had 4 staff members. Over the years, we've tried to find different efficiencies of how to conduct the role of mobility management and transit planning. Probably not to go through every step, but most recently, Chris had negotiated with NACOG for that 4th position to be housed under NACOG. That was an agreement that took place. When I came back, I evaluated it in light of the additional transit planning projects and funding. I think we can gain greater leverage out of that employee being under the CYMPO roof. So we've had, I want to say, I think at least the strategic retreat, we've had, I think, 2 TAC meetings where we discussed it and a board meeting. Anyway, she's 3 months on the job, but the position has existed in one form or another. It's just a matter of whether it's been with NACOG in partnership with NACOG or CYMPO. But the funds that we use for this are our 5305 transit planning funds. CYMPO receives dedicated planning funds every year to do transit planning. And additionally, we also pursue additional grant funds that are 5310 mobility management funds. NACOG applied on our behalf and they were awarded dollars for this position. So I hope that answers it. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, but in one form or another, we've had this position. It's just a matter of where it's been located at.
Well, that's why I was asking, because the last thing I saw was that our transportation planner was primarily at NACOG, because NACOG was the primary, the location the funding was coming from. The only difference is that we now have this new transit plan that's taking place between the two cities. And so I was just trying to find out who's paying the freight.
Yeah, good point, Supervisor Brown. The money that NACOG was awarded is being transferred to CYMPO. We're using those funds. So, and we have existing transit funds that we always, I don't want to say we save up, but they pile up because that's something that hasn't been as much of a priority. So all that to say, she's being paid through with existing funds and grant funds.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Can I have a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Moving on, item 11, review, discussion, and possible action to approve amendment to the FY 2022 to 2026 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. Mr. Gallegos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm going to call on Allison, and we have just a few housekeeping items here. Allison, can you walk us through what they are? Allison, you're muted.
Sorry about that. The top box is just simply adding ADOT's tip ID number per their request for record keeping purposes. Second box reflects the name change for the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report and Environmental Overview. Also noted is the fund swap between administration and the Sundog project. And then this next page is our part of our transit section. Per request from the Town of Prescott Valley Transit Development Coordinator, we are allocating some funding to the purchase of vehicles by the Town of Prescott Valley using the 5307 CARES Act funding. So that's noted here on this page. And that is the extent of the amendments being requested as part of this item.
We'll take any questions or comments you have, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
We have any questions? Thanks, Allison. Can we get a motion? Come on, guys, it's the last one of the year.
Mr. Chair, move to approve.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. Moving on, item 12. Todd, you're up. ADOT Northwest District Report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Real quick, our construction projects in the region, the Spring Valley signal on SR 69, all the work's done. We're just finalizing the closeout paperwork. Same with the Road 1 North signal on State Route 89 up in the Chino Valley area. The microsurfacing from Paulden to Hell's Canyon on State Route 89. The work's completed. We just got to do the project closeout. The ITS project on I-17 from Anthem Way up to the McGuireville rest area. Construction work's going to start on that project in January, and we're working on some middle items and long lead procurement items. Moving on into projects in development and design, the SR 69 widening project. We're working on the utility clearance and the TCE right away, the TCE easements, acquiring those and the right of way clearance. We're anticipating to advertise that project this summer coming up in 2022. The state legislative funding for the pavement press from Truewood Drive to Stone Ridge Road, that's anticipated to advertise in November of 2022. We've got a minor pavement preservation project on SR 89 from Glasswood Hill Road to Coyote Springs Road. That's going to be a mill and fill of the ACFC replacement. We also have a similar project down on SR 89 from Big Bug to Poland Junction. That's going to be advertising at the end of January. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Todd? Nice job, sir. Moving on, item 13, State Transportation Board report. Gary, you're up.
Thank you. We've got, as everybody knows, we've got a State Transportation Board meeting coming up on Friday in Globe. It will be Chairman Stratton's last meeting as chairman. The only thing on the agenda for Yavapai County, agenda item 3F is State Route 69. It's establish a new right-of-way from Prescott Lake Parkway to Frontier Village. And that concludes my report, unless somebody has a question.
All right. All right, jumping back to Kevin. You're up.
Yeah, hold on a second.
Oh, Phil?
Was it Gary? The new right-of-way between Prescott Lakes Parkway and Frontier Village?
That's what's on the agenda, is establish a new right-of-way for SR 69.
I thought we already established where that right-of-way was going to be.
Well, sometimes the approval from the Transportation Board lags a little behind, I guess, but it's finally coming to the Transportation Board to vote to establish a new right-of-way from Prescott Lake Parkway to the Frontier Village on State Route 69. That's just what's on the agenda.
Sounds like the widening. How much are we talking about, Gary? And that might give us an idea for sure what it is you're talking about.
Let me see if I can bring it up.
Mr. Chair, Todd also has his hand up, I think, to help out with a conversation.
Todd, what do you got, buddy?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to let everybody know what that is I ran through it real quick in mine. It's the temporary construction easements. It's to do the side legs in the area, some of the driveways, to tie in as part of the improvements and all of that. It is nothing that's a big impact. I mean, it's very standard on all of our projects. You know, if we want to talk about it further, you know, I can talk to the mayor and everything and get the resolution out, and we can go through the exhibits and all of that as part of the resolution.
I just want to make sure it wasn't another glitch that's slowing down this project again.
No. We're still on track to be advertising this summer of 2022.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
As far as I understand, it's just part of moving the project forward.
Or anything else? No? Phil, we good? All right.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Kevin, you're up for real this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on your earlier conversation on Sundog, I think I'll start at the state level. And as Vinny has indicated, I think that we do have some really good momentum going into next year as far as our 50 million earmark bill, which includes priorities from across greater Arizona, including the Sundog corridor. And I believe the way the legislation is drafted, that use on a DCR for the corridor is appropriate. So I think we're good to go as far as that is concerned. And We've met with leadership, both Republicans and Democrats. We've met with some of the key chairs. We have Representative Dunn from Yuma is going to sponsor the bill. I think we're in really good shape, but I think throughout this legislative session, it's going to be critical for everyone to push forward support of the bill with your legislators. And that's for two reasons. The way this process works, earmarks have become real popular over the last 4 years. And members have introduced bills at the beginning of session for specific projects. But ultimately, it's not those standalone bills that get enacted. What happens is, right around April or May, when the legislature starts to work on the budget, basically all of those standalone earmark bills stop in their tracks. And as the legislature starts to develop the budget, leadership will create what they call the box, which is the amount of available revenue that they have to spend beyond ongoing programs. And through that, they'll decide how much of that they want to dedicate to things like earmarks for transportation projects. And it's through that process that they decide which projects get in the budget and which ones don't. And if you've had a bill earlier on that's kind of made its way, through the various stages, and it's got a lot of visibility and you've generated some support, you've got a much, much, much better chance of your project getting into that budget. So it's important for you to push your legislators to advance the bill as far as we can get it. But secondly, it's also important because when we do kind of transfer over and they start to talk about what's in the budget and what isn't, while we're pushing that our bill and all of the 36 projects that in it advance together, they don't necessarily have to do that. They can pick and choose, sort of cherry pick what's in there. And so I think all that more important for you to, and of course, you guys got a very powerful delegation. So you're in a really good position as far as that is concerned. But I would continue to reiterate the importance of developing or at least analyzing that Sundog corridor and the importance of having that specific project ultimately in the budget. And so that's the advice that I would have for you as far as the timing on that. Typically, it's an election year, and that can sort of affect, when the timing on the budget in two ways. Most lawmakers, they want to get out of there as early as possible so they can start campaigning. But on the flip side, things tend to get a little bit more politicized, and it makes it more challenging to ultimately pass the budget. But I would anticipate that sometime between April and June, we will see the budget enacted, and we'll know which transportation projects are included in it. But as of now, I think we're in really good shape. The Transportation Committee Chair, Frank Carroll, is working with us, and we'll coordinate with him on the timing of getting the bill heard and when we have that hearing, and we'll keep everybody posted on that. But like I said, things are looking great. Of course, you will have to see how things develop. I've just now heard a little bit of brushback on, why are we going to do these state earmarks with all this federal funding that's coming in? And I think that's something that we can easily counter, but that's obviously not the type of response that we want to hear there. So we've got to keep that in mind, that this federal funding could be used as an excuse or reason for legislators to not be as enthusiastic as they were. So we need to continue to push and fight and advocate for that funding. So happy to take any questions at the state level.
Do you have any questions for Kevin?
Oh, Kevin, it's Phil Good. I think we need to have a strategy here so that we can make a compelling case to Frank and his transportation committee so that we can explain why we need the state fund. Because it'll be easy for the members of that committee to think, well, we shouldn't have to worry about what's happening up there and at the Sundog Connector and Yavapai because they've got federal dollars that they can tap into. And they don't really understand the liability that we're taking on if we decide that the study doesn't support moving forward with that. So I think really developing some talking points, and if we have to come back and down to the legislature and testify there, try to convince them that we need their support, we need to have a strategy for that.
We certainly do, and that's being developed. I can tell you the two key points to that are one, the state's current long-range plan, which only covers the state highway system, shows that we, over the 25-year period that covered, there was a 31.5 billion shortfall between anticipated revenues and expenditures on the system. So this federal funding, as huge of a boost as it is, will bring in over a 5-year period an additional $1 billion to Arizona. Now there's competitive grant funding that we could bring in as well. I doubt that it will match what we're going to receive in that formula funding, but we've got a 31.5 billion shortfall. This federal legislation shaves 1 billion off of that. So in one regard, it's a drop in the bucket. We've still got tremendous needs out there. It's not time to start cutting the state resources because of the increases at the federal level. The two just don't jive. And then the second big talking point is that the federal funding is really more oriented towards the highway system and the state DOTs. Basically, the federal government helps in the development of the national highway system, and it's up to the state DOTs to operate and maintain those highways. And so much of the focus of the federal funding is at the state highway system, and not so much on the local roads, even if there are a regional significance to them, something like Sundog. And so, clearly, this is all this additional federal funding is not a good justification for cutting state funds where local roads are really dependent on that state funding. So yes, we do need a strategy, and we are developing talking points.
Thank you, and I hope we can get that together so we can start approaching those committee members, and particularly the chairman.
Right. Although I also say your delegation is solid. I'm not worried about them. President Fan in particular, she gets it. But that is, I'm sure we're going to get some brushback. I think there's already 10 states that are now pushing to decrease the state gas tax in reaction to this federal funding. So that is sort of I guess to some degree you have to kind of expect this. And it's just another area that we potentially are going to have to address.
We also have to remember, though, that President Fan, as much as we love her and she does what she, a lot good for us, she's a lame duck.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anything else for Kevin?
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we made it to item 14. Time to adjourn. I hope you all have an amazing Christmas. Happy New Year. We'll see you next month.
Thank you. I'll take care.
Merry Christmas to all of us.
Merry Christmas. Hey, Kevin, Kevin, thank you very much for sending out that information on the transportation monies that are going out to all states.
You bet. Keep on the lookout for that. We're going to continue to get information on the federal rollout from the federal government. So that was first, and I think in many notices we'll get. But yeah, it's an exciting time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody.
All right. See you guys later.